Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Adobe XD Masterclass. My name is Howard Pinsky, Senior XD Evangelist here at Adobe, and I hope you're all doing well on this Friday afternoon. We've made it through another week, and we are back from summer break. If you did have the week off, or if you did just take a few days off, hope you had a relaxing summer break, and I hope you're doing well. Let me know in the chat who you are and where you're tuning in from. We've got Wade and Philip from Germany, and Clifford and Cody, Masayu, Afrosia, Allison, Cheryl with a fantastic last name, Cheryl Howard. Great to see you. Great to see returning people, new people. I love it. I love this community. It's a wonderful community. Some of you have been here since day number 1. We are on Masterclass number 59. We've been at this for almost, next week's gonna be 60 weeks. Crazy, isn't it? Alrighty, so let's go ahead and hop over to my screen. We've got Allison from New Orleans and Brett from Hamilton, Ontario, fellow Canadian. I can't wait to go back to Canada at some point. I've been stuck in this country. Actually, I can go back, but I'm playing things safe because quarantining and all that stuff, I don't want to get, the whole thing. Playing it safe. All right, so we are on my Twitter profile. If you don't follow me there, go follow me there. It's a good time over here. Very positive. I try at least. But I just posted a few minutes ago a little bit of a sneak at what we're going to be creating today. So a little bit of a backstory without getting too much into detail. We're doing this thing at work this week. Don't know if I can say the name of the thing, but we're doing a thing where we have to design a thing. It's very ominous. And this thing needs assets. So one of the assets that I'm creating is like a shoe application for mobile and desktop and various other platforms, right? So we're going to be creating this because it's fresh on my mind. So we're going to be doing that. Nick from the Bay Area. I also can't wait to go back to the Bay Area. I haven't been to the Adobe office in 2 years almost, a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. It's been a while. I just want to go and see people and talk to people and, not all the time because I'm antisocial, but once in a while is nice, right? I also recreated Clippy in Adobe XD this morning. I don't know why I do these things. Sometimes I literally woke up, I'm like, let's recreate Clippy. And this is based on the new emoji that Microsoft is releasing for Clippy. Anyways, Rob Zilla is in the house. Great to see you, Rob. Rob, I saw something on LinkedIn that you did, I think some sort of NFT partnership, if I'm remembering correctly, but congratulations. If any of you are not following Rob, go follow Rob. Wonderful illustrator, great person. Good times. All right, so we're gonna hop over to Adobe XD again. We're gonna be creating something like this. I don't know where it's gonna go, but we're gonna run with it. All right, so you can kind of see a preview here. I started with skates and then it evolved from there. This is typically how design projects go. You have something in mind that you start with, and then I actually jumped into Adobe Substance Stager to, materialize this skate. And then I decided maybe I'll stick with shoes because skates are too, I don't know, they're fun. I like hockey, I like skating. But anyways, so we're going to start off with an iPhone version of this particular app. So I'm going to go ahead and select the iPhone 12, iPhone 12 Pro Max, all that, the numbers. We're almost at a time where there's a new iPhone coming out, probably a 13 in, what is it, like 2 months or so, something like that, usually around September, October. All right, so for this, I'm going to go ahead and name this shoes, and this can be home. And what I want to do to start is I want a nice large image to really catch people's attention. You can imagine maybe when you open this app, there might be just like an advertisement or, just specific to this shoe, right? I know Rob's a big shoe person, I think. He's done some illustrations with shoes in them. So I'm going to go ahead and create the good old rectangle. You can grab your tools on the left-hand side. If anyone is new to Adobe XD, welcome, by the way. These masterclasses definitely go a little bit deeper than typically, but I try to, accommodate everybody. So If you do have questions, throw them in the chat. I will be paying attention. We've got Andre from Berlin. If I mispronounce your name, I apologize, but thank you for the kind words about the stream. All right, so I have this lovely rectangle, and I'm going to go ahead and hop over to Finder. And I went on a binge on Adobe Stock recently, and I just grabbed a bunch of images of shoes, very colorful shoes. I love creating very colorful designs. So let's start with this one right here. Looks pretty good. It's colorful, it's minimalistic, it'll work, and boop, there we go, we've got a shoe. Now, I might want, in this particular setting, I might want to blow this up a little bit so it's, you know, it takes up more space, you can see more of that shoe in the product. So I'm going to double click on this to access the mask and view. So I'm holding down my Alt key, or I guess Option key on the Mac, and also my Shift key to constrain it, right? And I can just kind of move this into place. Not too large. And you also have to remember that if we're designing for an iPhone 12, an iPhone 12 Pro, even some Android phones, we have at the top, right about this area here, about 45 pixels, somewhere around that, we have the good old notch, right? So you want to make sure that's protected. So nothing goes up there that users will have to interact with. Umacorn, great to see you, got your internet back. That's the worst. Not the fact that you got your internet back, that's the best. When it goes down, I know Kyle T. Webster, who runs the illustration masterclass, he's been having internet problems. He's also going through some medical stuff that he posted on Twitter, so I just want to send my best to Kyle. I know he's trucking through things. So we also have at the bottom of these devices the home indicator, and it's usually, you know, in this area here. I sometimes like to just grab a good old line, make it a bit thicker, change the color to white, round out the caps a little bit, just so I know that there is something down there. It's another one of those areas that you don't want to put anything down there that you're going to need to interact with, because you're not going to be able to get it, because that area is more or less protected. So, you know, in a few moments, we're going to build out a navigation bar for that area, and you're going to see how it's like a little bit further up. All right. Rob is joining from the web and leaving the app. That's when things get serious. When you join the web and watch this on Behance, it's serious business. All right, so we have our shoe looking pretty good, and now we want to add a few additional elements. We're going to keep this fairly simple. We might want some text to highlight what this particular collection is, or what the shoe might be called. At the bottom, we're going to have a navigation bar and maybe just a call to action of some sort. So I'm going to start by typing out the word pink. Shoes are pink, right? Now, there's another meaning to this. So it's actually going to be pink penguins, but we're going to get to that in a second. The team name of the thing that we're working on, we're all split into teams. We're the Pink Penguins, so I'm kind of running with that. Again, I can't talk too much. I don't think I can talk too much about what we're doing exactly. So you'll have to wonder, right? Now, if you've been watching my streams, or if you've been following me on various social platforms, you might know I'm kind of into serif fonts lately. You know, it's a little bit. It doesn't work in all situations. But something like, let's see, Kansas New is interesting. I'll probably want to go, you know, very bold or very black for something like this. And for this particular text layer, because it's focused on pink, we might want to pull in a little bit of pink, just a little bit. We have to be careful, right? Because, you know, the background's purple. It has some pink in it. We also have the shoe that has some pink in it. So we don't want things clashing too much, because if we go too pink, like if we sample like maybe this color here, we're pushing it, right? And of course, if you go, oh, that's not bad actually, but it's not purple, right? So we're gonna go just a little bit of pink in there, just a tiny bit. And I saw Wade, what's the app's purpose again? Shoe collection organizer. It could be, you know, it's kind of like the Nike app where you launch it to buy and browse shoes. And this could just be the featured shoe. I don't know. It's something generic about shoes. So we've got pink, and let's try a few different typefaces. We've got something like Jubilat, which is interesting. Museo is always a fun one, right? They have Museo, and they also have Museo Slab. And then there's something like Aurea Ultra. which I kind of like. And they also have an italic version. Ooh. And it's little things like this. You see how, you know, the little tail on the N and the I, they almost look like they can kind of come together and match up. And of course you can experiment with the letter spacing if you want, if you really wanted to get particular about it, but little things like that I love about typefaces. All right, so we've got pink, and then below that we want the word penguin. And for this one, we're gonna stick with just a simple white. Now I'm not too fond of the way this is looking because it's not pink enough that it looks different. It almost looks like someone made a mistake and didn't select white properly. So I may tweak that a little bit, maybe add a little bit more pink and see what that looks like. Again, we don't want to clash it too much with that background. And maybe I'll drag this up, make it a little bit larger. It's probably okay that there's some overlap over here. And then maybe this is part of a collection. So we're gonna have one more text layer right below, and we're just gonna type out something collection, right? Oops. And I'm gonna shrink this down. Maybe I'll kind of tuck it inside of this area here so it almost lines up with that G on the right-hand side. And you know, maybe to keep the focus on pink penguin, we'll keep those text layers on the lighter side, and then maybe for collection, we'll experiment with something a little bit different. So maybe we'll switch it over to like a darker purple, and we can even experiment with some blend modes, possibly. If you really wanted to blend in a little bit more with that background, you can try something like overlay. That looks pretty good, right? Soft light. It blends in a little bit too much. Overlay really, especially if you have vibrant colors in the background and you want to bring those through, overlay is quite nice. It's a nice option. All right, I think that could potentially work. I'm going to make sure to group these elements and call this header. And of course, I can make sure that these are all lined up, but we can work on that a little bit later. All right, perfect. So we have a bit of a call out, bit of a header at the top, and now at the bottom, we want to start building out the navigation bar in addition to maybe a call to action to explore this collection, right? The blue rim light, yes, look at it. I love, like I've got a little, what is it, nan light type of thing that I use for my videos and stuff, and I just love that little rim light that kind of goes around objects or products or people. Ew, it's great. Just adds a nice feel to that photo. All right, so at the bottom, we're gonna start with our navigation bar. I'm gonna grab the good old rectangle tool and draw one out. We can also drag out some guides if we were very particular about our spacing and our padding. So let's try maybe 16 pixels from the left, and then we'll do about 16 from the right as well, right about there. And we're just going to make sure that this navigation bar snaps into place. Of course, there are many ways to create navigation bars. Some people just whoop, right to the edge and right to the bottom, right? You can have some fun with it. Let me hide that. My dock, go over on this screen. There we go. All right, so we can have some fun. This is more of a fun style application. So I may, you know, grab these corners and round them out a little bit. Let's try about 16. For sticking with that 8 pixel grid. I think that could do. We might try 24 and see what that looks like. And then in terms of the styling of this navigation bar, we're gonna maybe add a little bit of color. So we're gonna switch this over to a linear gradient. The top color is gonna be mostly white. Maybe I'll add a little bit of gray in there, just a touch. And the reason I'm doing that is if we want to add a light inner shadow, or a rim light, for example, right? You'll be able to do that, and it's gray, so the shadow will be white. It could work. And then the bottom color, we may want to go pink or blue. Now, you probably don't want to do something like this because we're going to be having icons over top of this. And if you do a drastic gradient like this, white to dark, it's going to make it very difficult to put icons up there. So in that case, we're gonna just go in this area here. We're gonna keep it very subtle, right? Something like, that might be even a bit too much. Maybe we wanna go towards the blue a little bit. The differences are so subtle, you may not even be able to see them over this video, because gotta love compression, right? So we just have a very subtle gradient, white to this purplish color. And again, we can add some additional styles like an inner shadow. So if we do a pure white inner shadow, maybe we'll just have 1 for the Y value, so it's bumping it down from the top, and then the blur value we'll just set at 0 or 1, right? And you can kind of see there's a very slight edge to that. Is it necessary? Probably not, but it just adds a little bit of a funness to it. And then drop shadow wise, also not necessary. Someone, Andre's asking, do you use a trackpad or a mouse? Currently I'm using a mouse. Sometimes I'll use a trackpad, but yeah, currently using the Logitech, was it the MX Master? I think the original MX Master. Haven't gotten one of the new ones yet. This worked great. All right, so drop shadow, also not necessary, which is what you should aim for. You should aim to not need a drop shadow, right? But since we don't need one, we can have some fun kind of experimenting with something nice and subtle. So I'll bump this down to, I don't know, maybe 8. I'll blur it a little bit. It's a fairly small element, so we don't have to blur it too much. And then since the background is more of a purple, maybe I'll bring in a little bit of purple in here, just so we have a nice effect going on. If we launch the preview, that could work, right? It's nice and subtle, it's nice and soft. I would argue that maybe we can blur this even more. Let's bump it up to 16. That could work, right? It's there, but it's also not there, which is what you should aim for your shadows. Very simple, very subtle. Now, one thing I do fairly often, especially when I'm working with multiple monitors, is I'll just have this preview window up. Sometimes I'll just kind of dock it over here while I'm designing, and it just gives you a more of a bird's eye view of how things are progressing as you're designing. So if you're experimenting with borders, for example, right? This is obviously ugly, but you might be zoomed in on the design, but in this window here, you can see it nice and simply, right? All right. So we have the background for our navigation bar looking pretty good. And now we want to start adding some icons. So there are many ways to get icons into Adobe XD. One way is a plugin. So if you go to your plugins panel, or you go up to plugins and then browse plugins, you can go ahead and find something like the Icons for Design plugin. Gives you access to open source icons, which is wonderful. Or if you have icons at your disposal, I'm going to go ahead and launch Nucleo. It's a third-party icon manager, and I do have some icons from Font Awesome. I'm a big fan of their work. So we can start adding in some icons here. Let's go ahead and search for something like house. And this might be the home screen. We might be on the home screen right now. So this will be more of an active icon, or a solid icon, I should say. So I'll grab this one here. I'll copy it to my clipboard and paste it. Ooh, these are large icons. But they're all vectors, so you can make them larger, smaller, whatever you wish. And I'm going to just pop them here for now. And then in a moment, we're going to worry about scaling, padding, and then color as well. And then we might want one for maybe like a shopping bag. Something like this. That one looks nice. Or this one. They have a few different weights. Now these are solid icons, so they're not border based. So I can't just dive in there and make changes to the border. Some icon sets are border based, but these ones are line based. Let's see what that looks like. Sorry, not line based. They're just solid. Yeah, I think that could work. It's got a bit of a thicker line, but it will do. And then maybe a heart. Actually, you know what? We can make our own heart. Let's stop being lazy. Let's make our own heart, right? I love this Easter egg. So if you're looking to create a heart in Adobe XD, go ahead and grab your polygon tool, shortcut key Y, drag out a polygon. I'm holding down Shift to constrain it. You don't have to, but you can. And then in the properties inspector, over to the right, you have your different properties. You have the number of sides, you have your roundness of your corners, and you have your star properties, right? Here, less than 3. Kind of like in the old days when we want to tell somebody that we love them. We gave them a little less than 3. There were no emojis back then. And now we have a heart. Look at that. Isn't that fancy? So fancy. All right. Now this is a border-based icon. So we're going to bump this up a little bit to match this one over here. We might want to round out the corners. Possibly. You're going to definitely notice the difference right in this area here. So we have a few different options. We have this one, and that one's probably not going to work. So we have very straight or very round. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. What do y'all think? Straight, round, round, probably. It's going to be so small, we're not even going to be able to see it. Now, let's talk a little bit about border-based icons for a moment, and the advantages and disadvantages. Now, of course, one of the advantages is that if you need to make it thicker or thinner, you just dive in here to the size, make it, that's ugly, make it thicker, make it thinner. Actually, what I should also mention is that the position of the border affects things like that little rounded bit, right? So right now the border is set to the inside, so it's an inner stroke. We also have outer stroke, and we have center, so it's kind of on both sides of that path. But keep an eye as I switch, keep an eye on that area there. So here's inner, right? And then we have outer, and then we have center. So center and inner, center has a more of a, you know, it works. It's not as rounded, but it works. Now, of course, it can be a little bit larger, so you'll have to make sure that this is bigger. So anyway, going back to what I was talking about is, yeah, border-based icons, an advantage. You can dive in, make it bigger, make it smaller, all that good stuff. But when it comes time to resize these icons, that border remains consistent, as it should, right? But it appears much thinner because the icon is much larger. So if you're at the point where you know that you're pretty happy with the size of this border, it matches your other icons. I believe that, yeah, look, possibly looks like it almost matches, right? Yeah, I think that's good. So it matches the other icons. What I would suggest is just to outline the stroke. So under the object menu, you go down to path and then outline stroke. And now it becomes a solid icon. So going back to the example about resizing it, right? So same size icon, but the border now looks like it should. All right. So we've got our heart for our favorites, and now we might want maybe a search icon. Of course, we can very easily make our own search icon, but, you know, lazy. There we go. Move this down a little bit. And then finally, we may want a user icon over to the right-hand side. So we have something like, you know, all these different users, and let's sort this by, I think regular is the weight that we're going for. And there's an alien. Aliens are always, astronauts are always fun. Now this icon's very busy, right? So if I were to grab this astronaut, which probably wouldn't make sense, but yeah, you're gonna notice that it's very busy down there. It's not terrible. We might want to run with it, but it's very different than all the other icons, right? So these are things you have to think about. Something like this is probably more suitable, considering the other icons are very simple and very minimalistic. So we'll do something like this for now. I like my astronauts and my aliens and my ninjas, but we'll keep it simple. All right, so we have our icons looking okay, right? Now we want to make sure that they all fit. And we also want to make sure that they're all the same size and the color isn't going to blend too much with that navigation bar. So let's first start to see if we grab these icons and pop them down here, maybe use responsive resize to view. Okay. The size isn't too bad, right? The size is not bad. Now, what I will say is right now there are around 32 pixels for the width and 32 for the height. The ideal hotspot for mobile devices is around 45. So what I would recommend for things like this and things like, you know, if you have a settings icon at the top or something, or a button, is, you know, just grab a rectangle, make it about 45 pixels. Where are my layers? There we go. And just put it behind the icon just so it's there. and then just drop the opacity to 0. That way, there's always going to be that hotspot there, and when you go to prototype your navigation bars or your elements or whatever they are, then people won't miss them. There's a nice 45 pixel hotspot there, right? It also helps with rearranging and organizing and spacing out icons too. So I'm going to just group these. This will be house. I should probably just copy this and paste it outside. There we go. Oops. And one more on this side. All right, so now I'm going to very quickly go through and group these. This one is for search. And we have our heart and our bag. Just setting the opacity of these icons to 0. And you can also use a component as well for something like this. Very quickly, you can just hit 0 twice on your keyboard to bump that down to 0% opacity. And then finally, to keep things organized, I'm going to go through and just name these. That was user, and then search. We've got heart, bag, and then house. All right. Now, obviously, the color is not looking, hey, John, great to see you. The color is not looking great. It's white icons against a fairly white navigation bar, right? So we're going to go ahead and select all of these icons. They're all fill based, so we just have to change the fill once. And since we're going for a little bit of a purple in here, we're going to go to the purples. Whoops, we're going to go to the purples, and then maybe in this area here, we're going to go fairly dark, but we're going to add in a touch of purple in there, right? And if you take a look, it just has a nice hint of purple. So you compare that to something like pure black, right? So there's black and then there's purple. It just kind of blends in a little bit, and you can tweak this to your liking. And I'm also going to make sure to add this to my document assets, just like that, so I have this later on. I might also want to add the navigation bar there. Okay. Now the icons look a little bit too large. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shrink them down just a touch. Not too much, but just a little bit. And then now we can worry about spacing. So I'll position this one about 24 pixels from the left-hand side. This one about 24 as well. And then if I go ahead and select all of these icons, I can simply press the distribute horizontally button right here at the top, and it's going to space them all out for me. You can also put them inside of a stack if you want and set the spacing that way. And then I'm just going to shift them on up a little bit, so we have a little bit of room at the bottom. All right, that could work. Now, before we move on, one thing I definitely want to do is turn this navigation bar into a component. I would imagine I'm going to be using this navigation bar on several screens. So I want to be able to go and edit one of these, and it's just going to update the styling across all of them. So let's go ahead and name this container. I'm going to go ahead and select all these elements here. I'm going to put them into a group. And you don't have to put them into a group first. I just prefer that. And then you can press the plus button over here to the right to create a component. You can also create a component with the Command or Control K shortcut if you want to speed up your workflow a little bit. Hey Gal, great to see you. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Now I would probably argue that maybe the thickness of these lines are a little bit too thick. I would probably go for maybe one step down, possibly, but it is nice and bold, so maybe that's what we do. I don't know, we'll stick with that. Now, I did want to add one more element here, more of a call to action, so that someone can very quickly explore this collection of shoes, right? But you're noticing there's a bit of a shoe there, right? So we may have to revisit this, maybe bring this down just a little bit, just so we have a touch more room up there. Okay, that could potentially work. And here we might want to write something like explore the collection. We're going to stick with that same typeface. It's large enough that we can get away with a more of a stylized serif typeface. If it was smaller, like body text, probably wouldn't go in that direction. But we're going to stick with that, and then let's experiment a little bit. Let's try overlay. That could work. And then we may want to, send people in a certain direction. A lot of call to actions have an icon or an arrow or something to that effect, right? So I'm gonna, once again, hop over here. And you can certainly create an arrow in XD pretty easily, but I'm gonna grab this arrow here. Let's shrink it on down. Maybe I'll dive in here, bring this in a touch, and we might have this arrow kind of poking out on both sides, right? So we have that there, and then we might want to round this out a little bit. Now that doesn't match. Let me make sure that this is aligned to the grid. Actually, I'll just make sure to do this. Ah, the height is different. Okay. Yeah, that'll sort of, whatever, it'll work. It'll be on the other side, so we're probably not even going to be able to see it. So let me undo that for a second. Okay, so we're going to grab this. We're just going to move it over to the side. Just like that. Just we have a bit of an arrow poking out back here. And then we want to make sure to be able to match the style. So I'm actually going to copy the text layer here, copy to my clipboard, Command and Control C. And I'm going to dive in here. Actually, I can select the entire arrow group and paste the appearance. So it's going to take all available appearances from that text layer. Obviously, it doesn't grab the text properties for an arrow, but it'll just paste the color and blend mode, opacity, and that sort of thing. We'll fix it in post. Hey, Tim, great to see you. Similar to the icons, I would probably argue that this arrow is a little bit too thick, possibly. But we'll run with it. We'll see what that looks like. Okay, so we have our home screen looking pretty good, right? We have our header at the top. We have our pink penguin collection. And we can also put other things like the price and maybe when it's shipping and that sort of thing down here. We have a little bit of a call to action, which I'm going to make sure to group. And we have our navigation bar, right? So what we can do now is we can now move on to our next screen. And this might be the screen that gives more information about the shoe. It might allow you to choose your size and so on and so forth, right? So I'm going to duplicate this artboard. I'm actually going to keep that there. But the image, I actually want the image to change. So if I switch over to Finder, I do have this image here as well, right? And I'm going to pop this in right about there. And this will allow me to, allow me to kind of move it to the top and then have additional information down below that's not really obstructed by the image. Now, of course, right now, those shoes are kind of taking up the entire artboard. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag this on up to maybe about here. We'll a little more than halfway, right? Somewhere about there. We'll work on the text in just a moment. I can also double click and adjust this. Again, keeping in mind that there's a notch at the top, so we may not want to, hide the shoes back there. It'll give it a little bit more room up there. Shrink it down. So we could leave it like this, right? I'm going to actually hide this header just for now. So we could leave it like this. We could have a white area at the bottom. We could put some sort of an overlay or container over top of this, but we may also want to somehow continue this gradient. So we have some nice colors here. We have some purples and pinks and blues. We may want to continue that going down the artboard. So what we can do is we can experiment with some gradients. So I'm going to grab my rectangle. I'm going to drag one out. I'm not too worried about the navigation bar being hidden right now. We will get to that in a moment. And what we can start to do is assign some colors. There's a few different gradients we can use, but knowing that we might want a purple at the top right or a pink at the top right, maybe a purplish blue at the top left, and maybe some different colors down at the bottom, we'll do something like an angular gradient. And this will allow us to click in this area here, and we can even sample some of these colors, right? We'll do one up here. Maybe we'll select and sample this purple. Maybe we'll add a little bit of blue right in this area here from this section. And maybe we'll continue some of that blue going down in this area, but maybe we'll darken it a bit. So we'll choose one of these blues here. And then on the right-hand side, we might want to do something like maybe a darker pink or purple. Again, keeping in mind that there's going to be text and information on top of this, so we don't want to go too drastic, right? Then we can wrap things up by, I'll just copy this hex code and apply it to the front and back, right? I can always rotate this if I need to, but it looks okay. Maybe I'll make this a little bit more pink. I don't know about that. That could work, right? Now, there are some problems, obviously, right? First problem is we've got this little guy in the middle, and that's part of angular gradients. That's what you get, right? Because there's all the colors are kind of sprouting out from that middle point. And then the second problem is it really doesn't blend that well up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize something like an object blur to really make this blend nicely. So I'm going to move this up a little bit, just like that. And in my properties inspector, I'm actually going to go ahead and instead of a background blur, we're going to choose an object blur. And we're going to blur it quite a bit because we really want this to blend in at the top. Now, you're obviously noticing that we have, that little dot in the middle. It's blurring out, but so are the sides and so is the bottom. We don't want that. So I'm going to grab the sides and just stretch them on out a little bit, stretch the bottom out. And if you want to make sure that you don't have this kind of gradient extending off your artboard, even though you're not going to really see it, you can grab something like an object mask. So I can grab a rectangle, drag it off here, select both shapes, and then object, mask with shape. That way it's all nicely contained inside of this gradient. All right, and it's doing an okay job at blending up here. Now what we might want to do is tweak this color a little bit because we pulled this box up a touch. It's getting more into that blue range. So right here at the top, I may just want to shift this a little bit so it's a touch more blue. Look at that. Now it's blending in quite nicely. We've got pink and purple on this side. There we go. And now we have a nice blend going down our artboard. So it almost looks like one cohesive image. Now, of course, what you can also do is, right click, edit in Photoshop. Photoshop will launch if you have it, and you can just extend that downwards with content or fill or a lot of different things that you can do. Clone stamp, healing brush, sky's the limit. But if you don't have Photoshop or you don't want to deal with opening Photoshop and making those edits, this could work. All right, let's find our navigation bar and boop, pop it back up there. And let's add some additional content. So where's our header? Let's add our header back in there. We'll put this somewhere up in this area here, not too far up because we do have that notch at the top. The good old notch. One day we won't have notches and it'll be the greatest thing ever. Although the notches aren't too bad. It could be worse. All right, now over here we might want some additional information about this particular shoe. So maybe, these are sporty sneaks. Would you consider these sneakers? I don't know. They are now. Let's switch this over to white. And maybe we can try blending in a little bit. Now, one thing I'll probably mention, I don't know if I like that. Okay, so one thing I'll probably mention, in this stream and in this design and many of my designs, I tend to use questionable typefaces. Now, of course, it's not Comic Sans or not Papyrus, but typically you would not see a serif typeface like this used in an application like this, right? Typically. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. I would argue that you probably shouldn't, right? You should probably go for something a little bit more simple, something that's probably supported on your device in question. Just my 2 cents, but I like having fun with the styling of these designs, so keep that in mind. And maybe this is unisex. Now, do they have shoes that are for both? Maybe, probably, right? Now, for this area here, because this is going to be a much smaller text layer, this is definitely where I would probably want to strive away from that italic serif typeface. So I'll go for something like Nucabal. I still don't know how to pronounce it. Tim says, now that is a font choice. It's a bold font choice. And not just the weight, but it's a bold font choice. Again, I wouldn't recommend it. At least not if you're, actually developing something for an actual client. Unless they want it, then hey, go for it, right? Want to go medium or bold? I don't know. That could work. All right. And again, we can experiment with things like blend modes and blends in too much. Probably want to stay away from that. All right. Now down below, we might want a little bit of a description of what this shoe exactly is. Now, if anyone in the chat wants to get really creative, give me like a 2 to 3 sentence description on what's so special about this shoe. And try to throw in some puns, try to have some fun with it, and I'll pop that in here in a second. Ooh, where'd my text go? Line 2 and probably line 3. Now, we probably don't need bold for something like this, so maybe medium, and we might want to drop the weight a touch as well. Probably don't want to go much lower than 14. It's already getting a little bit small. So we'll see how that looks once we get some actual copy in there. And then in this area here, we may want to start adding in maybe some sizes that users can choose. So we can start with maybe a header. Just could say size, for example. And then right across here, we may want maybe some of the common sizes, right? So we might want to do something like 8.5. We'll put that one in the middle. You know what we can probably use? We can use a stack. I'm going to group this. I'm going to call this sizes. And I'm going to turn a stack on in the properties inspector right over here. And then I can dive in. So maybe we'll start with maybe 7. I'm going to duplicate. I can just duplicate a bunch of them. 7.5, 8, 8.5, 9, 9.5, and maybe we'll go to 10. Now these are definitely a little bit too squishy, so we're gonna just dive in here to the properties inspector, or you can do it directly on canvas. You can hover in between any of these elements and view. You're gonna hold down Shift and just spread them on out like that. I think size-wise, they're not bad. You know what? I should probably make them a little bit larger. Maybe 18. There we go. That could do. And we also want to make sure that we know exactly which size is the chosen size. So maybe 8.5, the one right in the middle, is going to be the one that is chosen. So I'm going to grab the rectangle, just draw out a little rectangle like this. I'll round out the corners a little bit. Actually, what I can do, we've got this nice gradient. Maybe we'll just use that. So I'm going to actually dive in here. I'm going to copy this layer and then paste the appearance. Now, what you're going to notice is that, because we have a lighter box and light text, things are blending in a little bit much. So what we might want to do is just assign it a different color, maybe this lovely dark purple that we're using. That way it's very clear which size is selected. Okay, so we have a bunch of people jumping in there. Okay. So we have some descriptions for the shoe in there. I'm just going to grab a few random ones. So Norsh is saying, with this shoe, you'll be able to jump to the stars. And then I did see Patrick wrote, heart of the matter is the new sporty sneaks of 2021 are a must for the summer season. All right, were there any more? Tim says, time to find your soulmate. Can always count on Tim to dive in there with the puns. All right. So now that we have some content, you know, we have more room, right? We have, there we go. Okay. Benjamin is saying, I usually don't get those drag sounds in my XD. We really need to add sound effects. Like I can just do all of them, like whoop and boop and I don't know, whatever. So yeah, we have some additional information here, but there's, you know, things are not filling up really nicely. So maybe we can bump the navigation bar up a tiny bit. Now, of course, we want to make sure it's consistent with this one over here. So we'll have to select both of them and drag those up. Maybe I'll move this up a little bit. This here. And size, we might be able to bump up a little bit as well. Line this up with the 7. Now there might be other options too, right? Maybe the shoe comes in different colors. Maybe it's not just pink. So that's something we might have to consider as well, right? So maybe up here, we'll do something like color. Now, this is going to be where things get a bit tricky, right? Because we have a color selector and we have a very gradiented background, and many of the shoes are going to be either pink or purple, right? What do we do? So there's a few things we can do. One, we can do something like this, where we grab a color, we'll keep that at white, and then inside here, we'll duplicate. Actually, we don't have to do that. We can just select a color here. Let's go for this regular pink, right? And then we can add a border, maybe on the outside, that's white. Just so that, you know, nothing is really blending in too much with that pink. So you can have additional colors here. Maybe this one is purple, for example, or purple or blue or whatever color this is. And then you can have another one. I don't know, maybe it comes in green. Now, bouncing off of this, one thing you now have to think about is, what does the active state look like? So assuming that pink is the default color, how do we tell which one is active, right? On the sizes, it was easy. We can put this box behind it, this rectangle, and we can change the color of the actual text layer. All good, right? This one, because we're using this white border, it's not all good. So maybe we can do something like, we can duplicate this, and then maybe we'll just do a very simple, and I can probably blend this in with like overlay or soft light. Maybe I'll drop down the size a little bit, just so there's a little bit of an extra border on there. That could work. I mean, there's lots of different ways we can do it. You can also add a big long white container that houses all the different colors. One other option would be maybe up here. Now this, of course, wouldn't fill in that space down at the bottom, but up here you can put maybe like a little color picker, right? We can even copy, we can even copy this. And then we can grab our colors and put them here, and we would not need the border in this case because we have a white background. I'd probably go, strive away from using this gradient, or, not too drastic, but something like this, you can also do that, right? So there are definitely options. I don't know which one all of you prefer. I kind of like having it down here because it's all part of the flow, right? You choose your color, you choose your size, and we don't have a button to add it to the card. We should probably do that, right? Let me actually get rid of this. All right, let's see. All right, I think we could change the border color to black or gray. Oh, yes, we can probably do that. And because we have a soft lighter overlay blend mode, that should that should blend in quite nicely. No, overlay might be too much, but I think, yeah, I think that could work. Nice and subtle, right? I like that suggestion. Who was that? Ennis, thank you. And we'll just do one more. And let's see, what other colors? Maybe there's just, more designer problems, right? Oh, let's just do a white shoe. Oh, but our border's white, right? Do we just do that? I don't know. See, these are the things that complicate things as designers. Well, the shoe is now dark. There we go. Problem solved, right? No white shoe. I am also going to very quickly group these elements, call this colors, and then turn a stack on. That way I can very easily adjust the spacing nice and quickly. All right. Do we, spelling mistake. Drew. Okay, I think I spelled it wrong. Right, possibly. Anyways, okay. And then finally, like I mentioned, we may want, oops, a way to add this to the cart. Let me very quickly adjust this. Bam, look at that. Oh no, it didn't line up. Oh yeah, okay, it's fine. It will do, it'll do. All right. Now we're coming into another problem with spacing, right? Now we've run out of space. This is why mockups are so incredibly valuable as a designer. Just blocking things out on an artboard before you get into this high fidelity stuff, just so you know exactly where things are going to go. This can probably be moved up. This can be moved up, and now I can grab all this stuff, which I should probably do a better job at grouping, but I can do that, and now we should have more space to add some buttons. Now there might be one button that kind of goes across. There might be two buttons. Maybe one is to add to the favorite or save for later, and then one might be to add to the cart. Now the primary button is going to be the boldest one. You know, it might be the first one. So we'll do something. Do we want to do completely round? Maybe. And to cart. Ooh, where am I? Oh, okay. Maybe we'll just sample this color down here, which I also have in my assets, but might be too big. And then over here on this side, I think there's too much space there, but that's okay. We'll deal with that at some point. This might be a secondary button. So what we might want to do here is maybe just have a border-based button. Whoa, what is going on? I can't type today. Save for later. And then we'll just match this with the border, which is white. Yeah, we definitely need to bump this a little bit. And bump. And ideally, we would be using components and states and all that fun stuff, but I have like a minute left. Perfect. All right. All right, I think it's looking okay. It's not looking great. We can definitely make some necessary changes, but I think it might work, right? Group this, move it down just a touch, move this down a little bit. Spacing is always fun when you're designing. Making sure that things are not too cluttered. All right, that will do. That'll do, pig. It's not, doesn't line up. Okay, now it lines up. And that will do it. Okay, now we didn't get to the website. We didn't get to a lot of different things, but you know, we started the process of building out the splash screen or the home screen, and then also what that shopping experience might look like. Now, there are a lot of things I would probably change about this. I'd probably make this bigger. I would probably adjust the spacing a little bit. This area at the top, we probably don't need that much room or space for that image. So I'd probably just drag this up so we have more room for actual content. Like this, look at that. Now we have all this room for colors and sizes, and things are just breathing a little bit more than they were before, right? That's a bit better. Alrighty, and that's gonna do it for me for today. Kyle T. Webster is coming up next with his illustration masterclass. Big thank you to everyone who has tuned in today. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Dribble and all those fun places. And I will be back next week with another masterclass. If anyone has suggestions on future classes, definitely shoot me a tweet. I do check those all the time. And I will see you all next time.